Today I am going to discuss certain key judgments relating to the environment and other issues which are also connected. They're connected in the sense that they relate partly to issues of public interest and matters where the Supreme Court has in fact interpreted what is the scope of the right to life as enshrined under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. So I have just made a short compendium of the key judgments. There are many others up to date, but these are the earlier the celebrated judgments and ones which are the key judgments holding the field even as on date. The first judgment which we are going to refer to is the judgment in the case of Municipal Council of Ratlam versus Vardhichand. It's reported in AIR 1980 Supreme Court, page 1622. Now this judgment is related to the environment in the sense that it speaks of the provision of section 133 of the Criminal Procedure Code, which specifically deals with nuisance and how a nuisance or rather a public nuisance is to be abated. Now why this particular provision is important is that in many cases, in many situations in the state of Goa in particular, we have cases where there is, for example, sewage being discharged into agricultural fields. There is sewage being discharged into ponds. There is garbage being dumped on the roadside, in open areas, into people's residential neighborhoods. There are cases where, in some cases, live electrical wires are running through certain residential areas which are not properly covered or not properly precautions are not taken, which pose danger to the public or cause a lot of nuisance to the public. So now in this case, a magistrate acting under section 133 of the CRPC has certain wide powers to direct abatement meaning to cure the nuisance or to seize the nuisance or to take action against the person who is causing the nuisance. Now the most celebrated judgment on this field is this case of Ratlam Municipal Council, which is of the year 1980, where the judges of the Honorable Supreme Court, one of them being the famous Justice Krishna Iyer, has laid down what is the scope of this particular provision and how it is to be enforced and how it is to be complied with. It says that the municipality not providing sanitary facilities and construction of public conveniences for slum dwellers, whether courts can compel municipal body to carry out its duty to the community to provide amenities and abate nuisance held whenever there is a public nuisance. The presence of section 133 of Criminal Procedure Code must be felt, and any contrary opinion to the contrary is contrary to the law. The public power of the magistrate under the code is a public duty to the members of the public who are victims of the nuisance, and nor he shall exercise it when the jurisdictional facts are present. The magistrate's responsibility under section 133 CRPC is to order removal of such nuisance within a time to be fixed in the order. This is a public duty implicit in the public power to be exercised on behalf of the public and pursuant to public proceedings. Failure to comply with the direction will be visited with a punishment contemplated by section 188 of IPC. Now 188 of IPC deals with, it's a penal provision where any person who fails to act on the directions of a public authority or acts contrary to the directions of a public authority can be prosecuted for a penal offence under section 188 of the IPC. Then further, the judgment holds is just in brief what was held. The municipal commissioner or any other executive authority bound by the order under section 133's Criminal Procedure Code shall obey the direction because disobedience, if causes obstruction or annoyance or injury to any persons lawfully pursuing the employment, shall be punished with simple imprisonment or fine as prescribed in the section. The offence is aggravated if the disobedience tends to cause danger to human health or safety. Public nuisance because of pollutants being discharged by big factories to the detriment of the poorer sections is a challenge to the social justice component of the rule of law. The imperative tone of section 133 Criminal Procedure Code, read with punitive temper of section 188 IPC, make the prohibitory act a mandatory duty. The Criminal Procedure Code operates against statutory bodies and others regardless of the cash in their coffers, even as human rights under Part 3 of the Constitution have to be respected by the state regardless of budgetary provisions. Then the honorable judges, in fact, if you see the section 133 has been reproduced, And what in effect it says is whenever a district magistrate or a sub-divisional magistrate or any other executive magistrate specially empowered in this behalf by the state government on receiving the report of a police officer or other information and on taking such evidence as he thinks fit, considers that any unlawful obstruction or nuisance should be removed from any public place or from any way, river or channel which is or may be lawfully used by the public. Such magistrate may make a conditional order requiring the person causing such obstruction or nuisance or carrying such trade, occupation or keeping any such goods or merchandise, owning, possessing or controlling such buildings, tents, structures, substance, tank, well or excavation, or owning or possessing such animal or tree within such time fixed in order to remove the obstruction or prevent or stop the construction of building, alter the disposal of such substance if he think objects to do so, to appear before himself or other executive magistrate subordinate to him at time and place to be fixed by the order and show cause in the manner hereafter provided by the order should not be made absolute. Such magistrate may make a conditional order requiring the person causing such obstruction or nuisance, carrying on such trade or occupation or keeping such goods or merchandise or owning, possessing or controlling such building, tent, substance, well, excavation within such time to remove obstruction, to prevent construction of building. And then section 188 is also reproduced. This is of the IPC, which speaks of the punitive action that can be taken. So therefore, if any one of you has a case where someone is constructing a building in your neighborhood and construction debris is piled up right next to your house, which is causing a nuisance. For example, it may be blocking your access to your house, or it may be the mud and debris may be seeping into your well, or there is some offensive material that is kept there like chemicals or anything else. So someone is just piling garbage in your neighborhood and not taking any steps to remove the garbage. You can approach the magistrate. Now in Goa, these powers are exercised by the deputy collectors acting as subdivisional magistrates, and they are empowered under section 133 of the CRPC to initiate proceedings, and they are even empowered to make a conditional order directing such person to abate the nuisance and take appropriate remedial action. Now, speaking of the record, we had one case of a society in Mercedes where a particular, I won't name who it is, but a particular person was intending to start a restaurant in a residential building in the basement and first floor. He had done massive illegal constructions in the building. He had piled up construction material in the car park, in the open space, etc. And because there was a stay order of the, if I remember correctly, it was by the Deputy Director of Panchayats or by the Panchayat. He was refusing to remove the debris and construction material. It was causing a lot of nuisance to the residents of the building because they couldn't pass by, they couldn't access the open spaces, they couldn't access their car park properly. The residents moved the deputy collector under section 133 and a conditional order was passed directing the person concerned to remove all the debris, remove all the construction material and clear the public areas in the building immediately. The person approached the Honorable High Court challenging the order of the sub-divisional magistrate. That writ petition was dismissed, holding that it is the duty cast on the sub-divisional magistrate when such cases are brought to his notice to take appropriate steps to abate a nuisance that is caused to the public. And here, public was even interpreted to mean the residents of the building as a whole who are affected by the illegal acts committed by the concerned person. So therefore, any of you facing any such situation has a clear remedy in terms of section 133 of the CRPC. Now we'll come to the broader issues regarding the rights given to a citizen under Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which guarantees everyone the right to life, which now has been interpreted by the Honorable Supreme Court to include a right to healthy life, right to earn your livelihood, right to have means of sustenance, right to have adequate nutrition. Now, then the basic judgments start from the judgment of there have been earlier ones also, but I've just given you one such key one. This is in the case of the construction park at Noida. This is reported in 2011, Volume 1, Supreme Court Cases, page 744. I'll just give you the gist of what was held in this particular judgment. The absence of a statute will not preclude the court from examining the project's effects on environment. In jurisprudence developed by the Supreme Court, environment is not merely a statutory issue. Environment is one of the facets of the right to life guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution. Environment is therefore a matter directly under the Constitution, and if the court perceives any project or activity as harmful or injurious to the environment, it would feel obliged to step in. So therefore, it was held that if there's a environmentally hazardous activity being done or something which is contrary to environment laws, a person aggrieved has a right to approach the High Court or the Supreme Court. The High Court under Article 2 to 6 of the Constitution, or the Honorable Supreme Court under Article 32 with a writ petition to enforce his fundamental rights to a clean and healthy life, including a clean and healthy environment as guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. Then the next one is also on Article 21. The gist of it is that the court can direct implementation of environment laws. Enactment of a law but tolerating its infringement is worse than not enacting law at all. The continued infringement of law over a period of time is made possible by adoption of such means which are best known to the violators of law. Law should not only be meant for law-abiding citizens, but is meant to be obeyed by all for which it has been enacted. A law is usually enacted because the legislature feels that it is necessary. It is with a view to protect and preserve the environment and save it for the future generation and to ensure good quality of life that Parliament enacted the Anti-Pollution Law, namely the Water Act, this is the Water Pollution Act, Air Act and the Environment Protection Act 1986. These acts and rules framed and notification issued thereunder contain provisions which prohibit and regulate certain activities with a view to protect and preserve the environment. When a law is enacted containing some provisions which prohibit certain types of activities, then it is of utmost importance that such legal provisions are effectively enforced. Violation of anti-pollution laws not only adversely affects the existing quality of life, but the non-enforcement of the legal provisions often results in ecological imbalance and degradation of environment, the adverse effects on which will have to be borne by the future generations. This is in the case of Indian Council of Enviro-Legal Action versus Union of India, reported in 1996, Volume 5, Supreme Court Cases, page 28. So therefore, if what it holds is that there are environment laws, we have the Water Pollution Act, Air Pollution Act, Environment Pollution Act, the Environment Protection Act, we have the EIA notification of 2006, which prohibits certain activities, it provides for regulation of certain activities. For example, mining, to start a mine, you can't just go to any open space or if you have a property, you can't just start mining in that property. You have to comply with the provisions of the EIA notification first, that's a 2006 notification. You have to get an environment impact assessment study done, you have to approach the MOEF for clearance, all that is there. So therefore what the Supreme Court holds is that these rights or these duties that are cast on the persons who want to start such projects can be enforced by an aggrieved citizen under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. And these are not just, it's not a paper formality, it has to be complied in rule, in matter as well as in substance. Then many a times now this issue has been raised where a citizen goes to the authorities to complain about certain acts or certain activities that are taking place which are contrary to environment laws or contrary to pollution laws, and sometimes a defense is taken by the violators or by the project proponents that what is your locus standi? You don't live in the same village, you're not from the same locality, what is your interest? So therefore, now the next topic which we are going to take up now is the issue of locus standi of a person to file a writ petition. Now the first judgment on this issue, or rather one of the earliest ones, is the case of Olga Tellis of the Supreme Court. Now if some of you are familiar, this case of Olga Tellis was filed against the Bombay Municipal Corporation. It was a case of these footpath dwellers who were being evicted by the BMC because they were not supposed to be living on the footpaths, and most of them were homeless, very, very poor, downtrodden, they didn't have any other places to live. And Olga Tellis, who was a social worker along with some others, had approached first the Bombay High Court, then the Supreme Court to enforce the fundamental rights of these hutman dwellers to have a dwelling place, to have a home of theirs. What they contended was, fair enough, if you want to evict them from the footpaths, you provide them with proper accommodation so that they can live. They have a fundamental right under Article 21 to have a decent dwelling place for themselves and their families. The BMC at one point in time had raised an objection saying that what is the locus standi of Olga Tellis? She's not an affected person, she's not a pavement dweller. How can she espouse their cause? The Honorable Supreme Court said absolutely not, that if any public spirited citizen is espousing the cause of the downtrodden or persons with no means of approaching the Supreme or the courts, or they are economically backward, and seeks enforcement of the fundamental rights, they are well within their entitlement. They are entitled to approach the High Court or the Supreme Court seeking enforcement of the fundamental rights of a citizen as guaranteed under the Constitution of India. So this was the case of Olga Tellis, and here directions were given to the government of Maharashtra and the BMC to ensure that if they are removing the hutman dwellers, the footpath dwellers, they have to provide them with proper accommodation. This was reported in AR 1986, Supreme Court, page 180. Then there's another judgment which was under Article 226, where a person brought an action before the High Court to, this was in the case of MC Mehta, to prevent the river Ganga from being polluted further. He had asked for certain directions to clean up the river Ganga. And here what was held by the court is that, I'll read that, in common law, the municipal corporation can be restrained by an injunction in an action brought by a riparian owner who has suffered on account of the pollution of water in a river caused by corporation by discharging into the river insufficiently treated sewage, or from discharge of such sewage into the river. The petitioner in the case is no doubt a riparian owner. He is a person interested in protecting the lives of the people who make use of the water flowing in the river Ganga, and his right to maintain the petition cannot be disputed. The nuisance caused by the pollution of the river Ganga is a public nuisance, which is widespread in range and indiscriminate in its effect, and it would not be reasonable to expect any particular person to take proceedings to stop it as distinct from the community at large. The petition has been entertained as a public interest litigation. On the facts and circumstances of the use of the case, the petitioner is entitled to move this court in order to enforce the statutory provisions which impose duties on the municipal authorities and the board constituted on the Water Act. This is the case of MC Mehta versus Union of India, AR 1988, Supreme Court, page 1115. Then in the next case, where there was an issue of a building which was obstructing the use of a public access or public road by the citizens. Here again, the court stepped in. This was a case of the Karnataka High Court. It stepped in and says that anything which is causing a nuisance, including obstruction of a road by an illegal construction, the public or any citizen can maintain a PIL and ask for enforcement of the rules and regulations to remove such nuisance, and direct the municipal corporation or the government to abate the nuisance, remove the illegal construction, and enable the citizens to freely access the public road or the public street. Now we'll come to other topics. The first one on your screen will be stone crushers. Here it was held that a stone crusher carrying on without obtaining license, failure of firm to minimize dust pollution and install sprinkler system despite undertaking given to court, a firm admittedly carrying on business without valid license in clear breach of statutory provisions, undertaking given to court, abide by conditions imposed by corporation for safeguards, failure of the firm to take necessary measures to minimize the pollution, authorities directed to ensure compliance of undertaking. This was of the Bombay High Court by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, as he then was. Now he is a judge of the Honorable Supreme Court. Here he directed the stone crushers which have been operating without license to stop and appropriate measures to be taken. Now here also in Goa, why I have included this judgment is that we have also a case here I have one such case in Sanjay Daryal and other places where there were a large number of these illegal stone crushers operating, some of them in forest land, some of them in Komdar land, where they did not even have a conversion sanad, which is the first permission you require to have under the Goa Land Revenue Code to change the user of the land from agricultural to non-agricultural. So therefore they were operating crushers, they were blasting the rocks, etc. without even having the sanad. Some of them had a NOC from the pollution board, some of them had a NOC from the mines department, but the basic license or permission to change the user of the land they did not have. And in fact now the Honorable High Court has directed the collectors of the North and South Goa, in that particular case of Sanjay Daryal, to take action with regard to these stone crushing units which are operating without conversion sanads. Then the next issue is environment clearance. Date for obtaining clearance, ex post facto environment clearance, circular extending date not valid. notification issued to obtain clearance and date fixed for obtaining clearance ex post facto. It is mandatory. The compliance of the notification, now they're speaking of the EIA notification of 2006, before commencement of any mining operation is essential and cannot be dispensed with. The MOEF has not so far conducted EIA in respect of any mining lease under notification. Notification applies to pending applications. No mining operation can commence without obtaining environment impact assessment in terms of notification. Mining activity can be permitted only on the basis of sustainable development and on compliance of stringent conditions. Violation of any conditions would entail risk of cancellation of mining lease. The development and protection of environment are not enemies. This is also in the case of MC Mehta. It's reported into AR 2004 Supreme Court, page 4016. Now this is relevant because we have the EIA notification, Environment Impact Assessment Notification, which in the schedule it mentions various activities which require a mandatory prior environment clearance before you start the activity or start installing the project or constructing. For example, mining, then we have this case of this marinas, we have dredging, we have construction of airports, etc. All of these activities require a mandatory prior environment clearance. So therefore what was said was the provisions of this EIA notification of 2006 is mandatory. They speak of no other interpretation. So therefore if you do not have a prior environment clearance, you cannot start the activity, you cannot start the construction, or you cannot start functioning. Then the next judgment is of the Green Tribunal, which is on the polluter pays principle. Now we have this, in environment law there is a concept of precautionary principle where it says that we should promote a system of sustainable development. That is, the environment and development should go hand in hand. Issues relating to environment are to be given paramount consideration. Development is important, yes, but it cannot militate against environmental concerns, and therefore whenever there is such an issue, one has to lean on the side of precaution. We should ask the project proponent or the person intending to conduct an activity to ensure there is minimal environment damage or environmental effect, and if that is not done, then they should be made to pay or give certain guarantees that the effects would be mitigated and they would compensate for such damage. Now here it was held, the tribunal adjudicated that the project proponents had started the construction of their projects respectively before obtaining the environment clearance, and it continued the construction in violation of its terms and conditions. Having considered such violations, the NGT directed the project proponents to pay compensation at the rate of 5% of the cost of their projects. This was the case of, it's quite a famous case of Forward Foundation versus State of Karnataka in other application 222 of 2014, judgment dated 7th of May 2015. This was by I think the whole, all 5 judges of the principal bench of the National Green Tribunal, headed by then Chairperson Mr. Justice Swatantra Kumar. And this principle has been followed by the Supreme Court in many other cases, one of them being the Bhopal gas case, where the the company had, in fact, was held liable for the leakage of the gas, the noxious gas in Bhopal, and which resulted in multiple deaths and injuries and to the citizens, and the company was made to pay millions of dollars as compensation in terms of this principle that the polluter pays for the damage caused. Then we come to noise pollution, which is also relevant to Goa because we have multiple festivals, we have people during festival time, all religions, using loudspeakers, they light fireworks, crackers, beating of drums, music, etc., etc. So this is one such judgment which will help if it is to be used or there is any such case. It says that no religion prescribes that any prayer should be performed by disturbing the peace of others, nor does it preach that they should be through voice amplifiers or beating of drums. In the name of religion, nobody can be permitted to add to noise pollution or violate noise pollution norms. Even if there be religious practice to use amplifiers, it should not adversely affect rights of others, including that of being not disturbed in their activities. Noise pollution regulation control rules 2000 should be followed. Because of urbanization or industrialization, the noise pollution may in some area of a city, town, might be exceeding permissible limits prescribed under the rules, but that would not be a ground for permitting others to increase the same by beating of drums, by use of voice amplifiers, loudspeakers, or by such other musical instruments, and therefore rules prescribing reasonable restrictions, including the rules for use of loudspeakers and voice amplifiers framed under the Madras Town, this was in the case of Madras, Town Nuisance Act in 1989 and Noise Pollution Regulation Control Rules 2000 are to be enforced. Even though the rules are unambiguous, there is lack of awareness among citizens as well as implementing authorities about the rules or its duty to implement the same. Noise polluting activities which are rampant, and yet for one reason or the other, the aforesaid rules or the rules framed under various state police acts are not enforced. Hence, the High Court has rightly directed the implementation of the same. This was in the case of Church of God Gospel in India versus KJ Majestic Colony, reported in AR 2000 Supreme Court, page 2773. Then was a judgment on the case of fireworks. Firecrackers noise levels. Sorry.
1 minute more on this video.
Noise level should not exceed 10 dBA. Ambient air quality, no usage between 10 am and 6 am. No horn should be allowed to be used at night. On a comparison of the two systems, for example, the present system of evaluating firecrackers on the basis of noise pollution and the other where the firecrackers shall be evaluated on the basis of chemical composition. Department of Explosives shall undertake necessary research activity for the purpose and come out with a chemical formula for each type of category or class of firecrackers. Every manufacturer shall on the box of each firecracker mention the details of its chemical contents and that it satisfies the requirements as laid down by DOE. In case of a failure on the part of the manufacturer to mention the details, or in case where the contents of the box do not match the chemical formula as stated in the box, the manufacturer may be held liable. There shall be a complete ban on bursting, sound emitting firecrackers between 10 pm and 6 am. It is not necessary to impose restrictions as to the time on bursting of light emitting firecrackers, the noise level at the boundary of the public place where loudspeaker or public address system or any other noise sources being used shall not exceed 10 decibels above the ambient noise standards for the area, whichever is low. No one shall beat a drum or tom-tom or blow a trumpet or beat any sound instrument or use any sound amplifier at night between 10 pm and 6 am except in public sound system public owned sound system shall not exceed more than 5 decibels. Then the ambient air quality standards specified for the area which it is being used. No horn should be allowed to be used at night between 10 pm and 6 am in the residential area except in exceptional circumstances. So therefore clear guidelines are laid down for use of drums, tom-toms, horns, vehicle horns, firecrackers, loudspeakers, etc. Just to recap, what was held was that you can't just have loudspeaker, even if it's a festival, you can't have use of loudspeakers beyond 10 pm and earlier than 6 am in the morning. Strict guidelines have been laid down by the Honorable Supreme Court which are to be followed. Bursting of firecrackers also is restricted between those times. In fact, even it says that those manufacturers of fireworks have to mention on the packets what is the chemical composition, that is because of the air pollution. Even blowing of drums, etc. All of that is restricted to the timing before 10 pm and after 6 am in the morning. Now the next judgment is on the issue of land acquisition. This is also relevant because we had earlier, now there's a new act which by which acquisition of lands, large tracts of lands by the government is made much more difficult. It's not that easy, lots of compliances are there. But in the earlier Land Acquisition Act, it was very easy. The government could acquire acres and acres of land as it is done in Mopa and various other places. Now here what was held was that in future, before acquisition of lands for development, the consequence and adverse impact of development on environment must be properly comprehended, and the lands required for development that they do not gravely impair the ecology and environment. So basically what was held was that if you first you have to assess whether there's going to be any impact of the proposed development on the environment, and therefore upon such assessment you have to choose the land which is going to be acquired for a particular purpose. Now we had used this judgment in the Mopa when the Mopa airport case was at the stage of land acquisition, that there was no environment impact assessment study done before the land, all those land and all those villages were acquired. Of course, the Honorable High Court did not go into that issue, unfortunately, but this judgment was cited as one of the grounds on which the acquisition should be quashed, that there was no environmental impact assessment study done to ascertain whether that land in all those villages, which is in fact eco-sensitive, rich in biodiversity, should be acquired or not for the purpose of constructing the Mopa airport. Compensation and damages. This was in the case of the Shriram gas leak. Infringement of fundamental rights of large number of persons by way of gas leak. Supreme Court in social action litigation can award remedial relief of compensation in the writ petition itself. An enterprise which is engaged in hazardous or inherently dangerous industry which poses threat to the health safety of the persons working in the factory and residing in the surrounding area owes an absolute and non-degradable duty to the community to ensure that no harm results to anyone on account of hazardous or inherently dangerous nature of the activity which it has undertaken. The enterprise must be held to be under an obligation to provide that the hazardous or inherently dangerous activity in which it is engaged must be conducted with the highest standards of safety, and if any harm results on account of such activity, the enterprise must be absolutely liable to compensate for such harm, and it should be no answer to the enterprise to say that it had taken all reasonable care and that the harm occurred without any negligence on its part. This is also the case of Mr. M.C. Mehta. Mr. M.C. Mehta should be credited with many of these celebrated judgments on the environment and related issues. In fact, he is a pioneer as far as these matters, public interest litigations are concerned, where he is approached the Supreme Court in numerous cases. Some of them, notable of them being the Taj case, where he had got all those polluting tanneries which are operating in Agra, in the precincts of the Taj Mahal, to be shifted out of there. The cleaning up of the Ganga, various in Delhi also, the vehicle pollution. Then is the issue of right to life of workmen and the right to medical care. Articles 21, 38 and 39. 38 and 39 being the directive principles of state policy which impose certain duties on the state and the state authorities. The expression life assured under Article 21 of the Constitution does not connote mere animal existence or continued drudgery through life. It has a much wider meaning which includes right to livelihood, better standard of life, hygienic conditions in workplace and leisure. The right to health to a worker is an integral facet of meaningful right to life, to have not only a meaningful existence but also robust health and vigor, without which worker would lead life of misery. Lack of health denudes his livelihood, compelling economic necessity to work in industry exposed to health hazards due to indigence to breadwinning for himself and his dependents should not be at the cost of the health and vigor of the workman. Facilities and opportunities as enjoined under Article 38 should be provided to protect the health of the workman. Provision for medical tests and treatment invigorates the health of the worker for higher production or efficient service. Continued treatment while in service or after retirement is a moral, legal and constitutional concomitant duty of the employer and state. Therefore, it must be held to be the right to health. That right to health and medical care is a fundamental right under Article 21 read with Articles 39C, 41 and 43 of the Constitution, and make the life of the workman meaningful and purposeful with dignity of a person. Right to life includes protection of the health and strength of the worker is a minimum requirement to enable a person to live with human dignity. The state, be it the union or state government or an industry, public or private, is enjoined to take all such action which promotes health, strength and vigor of the workman during the period of employment and leisure and health even after retirement as basic essentials to life, to live the life with health and happiness. The health and strength of the worker is an integral facet of right to life. Denial thereof denudes the workman the final facets of life, violating Article 21. This was in the case of Consumer Education and Research Center versus Union of India, AR 1995, Supreme Court, page 922. So therefore, to sum up, these are the, broadly speaking, these are the judgments which deal with various facets. There are many others, but I've taken one on each key topic which affects the rights of citizens in their day-to-day living, their day-to-day lives, noise pollution, right to health, have a good health facilities now. In these COVID times, in fact, it is the duty of the government, going by the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court in the case of consumer care, that they should provide adequate healthcare facilities to all citizens. In case I would refer to Article 38 of the Constitution of India, to provide healthcare facilities to the citizens to ensure that they have access to proper hospitals, doctors, without much cost. That is all. These are all duties that are cast on the state authorities in terms of the directive principles of state policy, which are enshrined in our Constitution. Article 38, it says that state to secure a social order for the promotion of welfare of people. And what it provides is that the state shall ensure to minimize inequalities in income, endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status, facilities, opportunities, etc. Then Article 41, 41 speaks of the right to work, to education and public assistance. Article 39 speaks of the principles of policies to be followed by the state. That is to ensure the citizens, men and women, equally to have the right to adequate means of livelihood. The state ownership and control of material resources should be vested with the state. Health and strength of workers, men and women, and tender age of children are not abused. Citizens are not forced by economic necessity to enter into avocations unsuited to the age of strength. So therefore, all these are duties that are cast or upon the state to ensure to its citizens, and this is very relevant in today's date where a lot has been said about the way the governments have been functioning in COVID care, etc. So this is what was held by the courts in various judgments. So therefore, these are all that is there for today. If anyone has any question with regard to any particular issue, you can ask me.
Yeah, hi.
I can't see you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, now I can.
Sorry, it's a bit dark. It's a bit dark here.
Yeah.
Essentially, thanks very much. That was very helpful. I suppose in a lot of people's experience, a lot of these laws, these judgments are being flouted every day, right? So if we take sound pollution, for example, I think it's completely ignored because you have almost every religious institute that I pass has got loudspeakers. Most of them kind of blare them loudly, especially during festivals. And actually I think the problem really is not the law or the judgment, all that is there. The difficulty is getting it actually enforced, like you said.
Correct. The laws are there, they're not being enforced.
And it's very, very difficult to get enforcement. I suppose, do you have any tips for kind of making it easier for the common man who doesn't have a lot of time, resources, and indeed is also always sort of threatened by, I guess large religious institutions or criminal gangs who are doing bad things? What in your experience is the most effective way to actually get some of these laws enforced?
See, the most effective thing to do would normally be call the cops and ask them to take action, but it does not happen. Our experience, and this is in the case of the people in Anjuna who are being troubled by these late night rave parties, the cops don't act because they've been, they are in the payroll of whoever these party organizers are. So what we had got some of them to do is they had decibel meters and record the noise pollution levels and then submit it to the pollution board, and now we are even going to the NGT with this issue. So, but otherwise what you could do is the pollution board now has their email addresses and stuff. So you could start with sending them the emails with the recording of whatever the noise, if it's a loudspeaker being used, with the recording of the decibel levels, and or if it's whatever firecrackers or anything like that, you could start with the pollution board because they are also supposed to take action in terms of the noise pollution rules. They are supposed to monitor these things, and if they don't do it, you have the right to approach the court, the NGT or the High Court, to enforce the rules. Or you could form a committee in your village, and get the government to recognize this committee as a noise pollution monitoring committee. That was even done for Anjuna in a PIL which we had filed, where a noise pollution monitoring committee was formed, comprising of some villagers and the Mamladar and certain others. Of course, right now I don't know if it's functional, but it was constituted. And they were supposed to go about the village and monitor these parties that were being held in the late hours of the night.
Hi Nigel.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Very illustrious lecture. What I need to ask you is a generator installed in a building, old building, which didn't have earlier provision for a generator. Subsequently, somebody hires an entire space, requires uninterrupted power supply, installs a huge generator next to a residence. Now it involves here whether the fire brigade was consulted, whether the space in the CCP or the corporation or the Panchayat was
pollution board,
asked.
they will first need an NOC from the pollution board in terms of the noise pollution and air pollution issues are concerned. So you can approach the pollution board and ask whether they've got an NOC under the noise pollution rules as well as the air pollution act. I suppose I don't know how it's being operated. Is it a battery operated generator, I suppose, no?
No, diesel operated.
Diesel. So all the more you need air.
Yeah, battery operated should be a battery.
Battery, yeah. So then you can check.
Okay, minutes, so I don't know.
Yeah. You check with the pollution control board first whether they've obtained an NOC. That's the first NOC they have to obtain to operate such a big. It's a big generator, I suppose.
Very big, very huge.
Correct.
Yeah, large. What I wanted to know from you is that when passing a building plan, today, if you pass a building plan, you have a space provision for a generator today. But as to your buildings which are there, which are rented out, you can lease out. These people install subsequent leases, that is, install generators. So is it not defeating the building plan? So local panchayat or the local corporation doesn't come involved?
It does. If the generators are being installed in places other than where they're supposed to be, then it's a violation of the plan.
Yeah, in earlier building, there was no plan for generator at all.
But then
Old building.
the panchayat or the municipal corporation has to approve the location of that generator. It should be in such a place which causes minimal inconvenience to the residents of the building.
Where is the one agreed to vegetate the grievance?
With the local authority under the Panchayat Act or under the Goa Municipalities Act or the Corporation of City of Panaji Act and the Goa Pollution Control Board if there's a noise pollution by the generators beyond permissible decibel limits.
Now this issue what you're talking about fireworks and decibels. There's a nice noise pollution committee set up, but none of them are given the meter. The government has not provided the noise committee a meter, so this is non-functional. The committee was formed, and none of them, not even the police, anywhere, a police station is with a today the meter. And today they all have these to detect temperature, to gauge the temperature. So to gauge the sound, no police station has got a sound meter.
You could approach the High Court for a mandamus to enforce this that the government should provide these decibel meters to the authorities. It's a good case to file a PIL and ask for a mandamus. If there's a committee and they don't have the equipment, then there's no point of having a committee, right? So you could approach the High Court.
Yeah, it's only a decorative committee.
Correct.
Because I've been filing complaints on whether carnival or the Nakasur, which are not religious events, but they are traditionally and they become commercial through politicians. But the police don't act because there is political power. They're supposed to stop noise pollution after 10.
No, if
carnival or
you need a decibel meter, that's the minimum you need for any enforcement authority.
police say we are not provided with the decibel meter, so we are unable to check.
You could approach the High Court for a mandamus to that effect under Article 226.
That's nice. Thank you. Yeah, wonderful.
So my question is, of course, in connection to the Sankaner Creek, I've been documenting it over the years, and I have also taken officials from the GSCP, that's the Pollution Control Board, and worked with the farmers. And right now the issue is the farmers are really struggling, and of course the state of the creek has gone from bad to worse. So what is the recourse, with all this documentation, what is to be done?
See, I'll give you for the Kolva Civic and Consumer Forum, which is headed by Mrs. Judith Almeida. We had filed a PIL writ petition before the High Court. It's PIL writ petition number 15 of 2011, where we had asked. There's a creek on the Kolva beach. I don't know if you'll have seen it, but there's a creek which flows right from the village through the beach up to the sea, and it was heavily polluted by the shacks and restaurants on the beach. They were throwing garbage and releasing the sewage into the creek. It was clogged. Nobody was cleaning it, so we got it cleansed and desilted through the High Court. The High Court directed the WRD, the Pollution Control Board, the Panchayat, all of them to desilt the creek. It was done twice, and in fact now there are composite directions issued by the High Court to protect and preserve the creek, including periodic desilting, and also measures to restrict persons from discharging sewage and waste into the creek. That the Panchayat should ensure that there are no outlets which are draining sewage, etc. So that you could probably use that. And in fact, under the Water Pollution Act, it's a duty of the Pollution Control Board to make sure that the creek is not polluted by effluents or other pollutants. In fact, as far as Santines Creek is concerned, I think the first thing we all need to do is get it desilted and clamped out, so that there's free flow of water through the creek. Because at many places it is clogged up. It's blocked from what I see. I can share the judgment with you. Maybe you could use it.
Yeah, thank you for this. I'll follow up with you.
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
We have another question from Mr. Gaurish. I'll ask to unmute.
Well, question from Gaurish, what I'm reading is, who's responsible for collecting branches of trees cut in the rainy season? That's the question from Gaurish, as I can see in the chat. And who's responsible for collecting garbage dumped by the roadsides in municipal areas? Now, collection of garbage in municipal areas is the responsibility of the municipal corporations, and in the panchayat, it's the responsibility of the panchayats. Primary duty of the local authorities. Now, as far as removal of branches of trees are concerned, if it is cut by the electricity department, it is the electricity department has to remove the branches.
Yes. What has happened? Few days back, Dr. Nigel only had filed an PIL and we are the petitioner, and the case was filed at High Court. And just a few days back, some inspection was carried out in our village, and it was carried by PCB and GPCB and Goa Pollution Control Board with our mining department, and they have stated in their report that nalas and nalas flowing through the village should be distributed. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go on.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, go on.
Okay. And recently what had happened in a newspaper, there are some roads to be constructed and bridges on this nala only, and what is happening actually? The places where the bridges are being built, there the water is been spreadingly flows to the main river. And the river is, you will be knowing that Par river, from where the water is being fetched for the entire Goa, and water is being supplied for drinking purpose. But being the stream is fully filled with mining silt, we have demanded this department that it has to be desilted immediately. But how this PWD can build bridges, because the bridge, I have seen that plan on which the bridge which has been built is very much small, and the water cannot pass. And being that nala is filled with silt now, the level of nala is being, the level of water is rising in the rainy season, and water flows over these ponds and coming in our land, like agricultural land, in our kulagars, and we are destroying this whole farms, and kulagars have been destroyed. So many years back, I have filed my case in Mamlatdar. Then all these letters of correspondence is going on, but no one hear me. So we were forced to file my case in High Court. So recently all this thing happened, but should I object that?
Yes, of course. If the nalla is being blocked by construction of a bridge, and which will affect the free flow, which will affect the free flow of water through the nalla, you should certainly object. Object who's constructing the bridge. If it's PWD, file an objection immediately with a copy to WRD and all other bodies like Panchayat, etc. You can't construct a bridge which will obstruct a nalla.
Should I take a resolution from Panchayat?
Yes, you could do that.
Okay. And I have one more query, sir.
Yes.
This is not regarding to this Goa jurisdiction. It is in Maharashtra jurisdiction.
Okay.
Directly, It is nearby our Sakli village. But in Maharashtra, there is one village called Talekol. From many years, we are heading those people, guiding those people because they are facing very much trouble from these minor mineral. You have been knowing stone quarries. You will be knowing, sir.
Yes, yes,
The
go on,
stone
yes,
quarries
yes.
are run by these stone quarries are being run by gold miners, but whatever they did, they not even they have not even got their consent from these local panchayat. So also they were running their quarries. So we were forced and we agitated for almost 16 days.
Okay.
And our agitation was started on 19 December till the 3 January. On 3rd January 2020, this January we have got a stay order for all those mining.
Okay.
But suddenly in month of May, on 28th May, this collector had given an order to start this mining, saying that these mine owners have raised the loan and they cannot pay their loan now because all operation has been stopped. And also they are saying that the workers which were been working in their mines, almost 17 crusher and 5 mines were being operated. But
What you could do
now,
is, what you could ask them to do is challenge that order of the district magistrate or collector before the whichever competent forum in
they have
Maharashtra.
stopped, no?
Yes. That order, if that order is just issued because they have taken loans or they have financial difficulties, it's an illegal order. They have to obtain necessary permission to run the quarry. So that order of the magistrate can be challenged, of the collector. It can be challenged before the. It will have to do it in the Bombay High Court with the principal bench at Bombay, because it is not in Goa jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yes.
Sir, the serious part is that the orders which they have passed, they only give to mine owners and only Tahsildar. The collector gave order to Tahsildar and mine owners, but no villagers received any order or any letter that these mines are being started. If no person or nothing was corresponded with the villagers, can it be
Okay. Make a representation on behalf of the villagers to cancel that order, to recall that order.
Yeah.
Immediately make a representation from the affected villagers to the district collector and whoever else is concerned to recall that order which is issued.
We luckily we got those news via through some source, and we put a we received by RTI only,
Okay.
and then RTI was we received an RTI.
Okay.
So RTI this order we have received recently, and 1 month have passed,
Okay.
so we can challenge, no?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Nigel, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
Suppose if you observe some illegal activities going on in, destruction of the environment, can the government use this present section 144 to stop people from recording or taking pictures of the illegal activity?
No, they cannot stop you. They can only stop gathering of more than 4 people, if I'm not mistaken. That's right. As per the order of the district magistrate. The order is basically to prevent gathering of more than 3 to 4 people at one particular place.
Yeah,
But if you go alone and take a photograph, nobody can stop you, provided you're wearing a mask and whatever else. Social distancing norms are.
properly.
Yes.
All the social guidelines are to be met.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think we should close here because we've also, Roshan and all these people have to go home and this 8 o'clock will be lockdown time. So on behalf of the course, I'm very sorry for the interruption with this Zoom meeting. We thought that they would allow us to go beyond 40 minutes, but it doesn't seem to be the norms right now. They said that they had extended it during the COVID period to unlimited amount of time. That doesn't seem to be true. So let's see what can be done. But in the meantime, on behalf of the participants, I would like to really thank Nigel for very competently handling this lecture
Most
and
welcome.
for giving us a very global view of all this. You're the first speaker in the PIL course who is going online, because people have been demanding with us, please restart. We want this course to be restarted. We don't want to forget whatever we have learned in the first two lectures. So that's why we said, and we were very happy that you said yes, Zoom, I'm ready. Let's go ahead.
We've been doing it
Thank you
for
very
court
much.
hearings, so yeah, we're good. Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Stay
Thank
safe,
you very much.
everyone.
Roshan,
Yes.
will you hand over our gift?
Yes, I'm here, and for everyone to see, they are here.
Okay.
Alice is here, and
Thank you very much.
On behalf of the participants, we select some very good, outstanding organic stuff, which your wife will approve of. You will don't, but we believe in giving you something which is wholesome and which will protect your health.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Yeah. Stay safe.